Good morning. I'm back.
Well, first of all, sorry I'm late, but
I'm happy to be back. I'm here to play.
There are some things I want to say.
I'm gonna make it real brief. Y'all had 2 weeks to do y'all's talking, let me do mine.
I'm gonna take my talents to South Beach to be
Good morning. It's Friday, I think. Is that what day it is?
Yeah.
I think we have to do a radio show on Fridays. I'm not awake this morning, but I am Paul Gerke. That's Mike McManaman, and you are listening to Unsportsmanlike Conduct on FlintTalkRadio.com. Mike, you go ahead and take the top of the show.
Well,
am I imagining things? Did that sound just play again?
Yeah, that just played again. If you want to talk to us live, call us at 810-208-1854. You can join us on our Facebook page on Sportsmanlike Conduct with Paul Gerke and Mike McManaman. If you have anything to say, post it. And obviously, you can chat live with us. If you're watching us live, you already know that. So
I think your mic's coming unplugged.
maybe.
Yeah, just like wiggle it.
Yeah. Yep, it's fine.
Okay, we're back. Anyway, it's been a busy week in sports. Michigan beat Notre Dame last weekend. It seems like we just did this show, or maybe we just didn't do the show. It seems like there's like a huge gap of time in between when we have to report on things. But anyway, Michigan beat Notre Dame last weekend. The Lions lost in a heartbreaker. Mm-hmm. Michigan State did what they were supposed to do against Western Michigan. And we're going to talk about all that and a whole bunch of other stuff in the sports world. Somebody won something in women's sports last night.
Oh, really?
I haven't verified it yet.
I've heard about women's sports. I
heard a rumor that some women's team beat another women's team in a game involving a ball.
Wow.
And possibly a hoop.
But
don't write home about that.
Yeah, we get some in trouble with this topic.
Let's have fun with it later. But anyway, let's get right to the business of the day. Michigan and Notre Dame last Saturday. Michigan comes out with a 28-24 victory over Notre Dame. Denard Robertson making a case for himself for the Heisman Trophy. 28 carries, 258 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That's just on the ground. In the air, 24 for 40 for 244 and another touchdown. Is there another player in the nation right now that is generating more Heisman buzz?
No, there's not. He played outstanding. It was only 2 games, but he is an early Heisman frontrunner, and everybody's talking about it. It was on the front of Yahoo. So, I mean,
that's where I get my sports news.
That's where you get your sports news. That's when you know you're legit, is when you have like the top story on Yahoo. Like it was right there on the front. Nobody's playing better, but I don't think he can keep it up for that long. And it's Michigan. I don't think that he's legitimately a Heisman. Going to be Heisman, and he's going to get hurt. So,
well, Michigan is ranked now nationally 22nd in one of the polls, 20th in another, and that's only going to go up because Michigan is going to be 5-0 here. They've got a couple games against Cupcakes coming up. Mm-hmm. They got the hard part of their schedule taken care of right now. I believe they're playing
until they get to Big Ten conference.
Right,
play.
But for now, I think things are looking good for Michigan. I think they play Bowling Green not this week, but next week. A couple other bad teams. Then once they start their Big Ten schedule, they open with Indiana, and then they've got Michigan State at the Big House. And if you're a Spartans fan, I think you have to be concerned at this point. Mm-hmm. I said coming into the year that Michigan State was going to beat Michigan, but I didn't expect Denard Robertson to be putting up 450 yards of offense every game.
Yeah.
So Michigan could very reasonably start 6-0. Does that guarantee Rich Rod another year?
No, not necessarily. There can be a total collapse at the end of the season. And if Denard gets hurt, he's going to have a lot of trouble still. This is great for Rich Rod, though. He's loving it, though.
It seems like the question is, when is Denard going to get hurt? He went down again with another injury last weekend. I believe he only missed a play. Tate got in instead of Devin Gardner.
It's going to be during one of the pivotal Big Ten games, and he's going to get hurt, and then the whole season's going to be a wash. That's what's going to happen.
I don't think it's going to be a wash. I think that this sort of rekindled a lot of passion for Michigan sports fans that haven't had anything to cheer for Michigan, whose season has effectively been over each of the last 3 years before it even started. And I like what Michigan did with their schedule. We talked about this last week, where they have legitimate contending opponents, and they're taking care of them, taking care of business early in the season. And then I like the soft middle, if you will, where they've got a couple of, I don't know if they're NAIA teams, but essentially bad football teams.
They'll be able to tell about how they compare, I think, when Michigan State plays Notre Dame. If Michigan State can pound on Notre Dame, then maybe Notre Dame wasn't that sweet of a.
Yeah, that's interesting. MSU beat Western on last Saturday, 38-14. They kind of did what they were supposed to do, but they didn't look very effective. I think a lot of pundits are saying that Michigan State maybe isn't what they thought they were. They play Notre Dame.
The Bears are who we thought they were, though.
They are who we thought they were. We should have got that for a drop today because that's the first thing I thought of after the Lions game last weekend. But we'll get to the Lions in just a second. Michigan State plays Notre Dame tomorrow, nationally televised game on ABC at 8 o'clock. Who you got?
Michigan State.
I don't know. I think that if Dane Christ stays healthy, it's pronounced Dane Christ, I guess, but he plays for Notre Dame. Why not call him Dane Christ? It's awesome.
I don't know. Might as well.
I had fun
Right.
last weekend, I'll be honest, watching the Michigan Notre Dame game, making jokes about Dane Christ's sweet last name.
Yeah, then he got injured.
When he got hurt, right. I said
Then he was resurrected.
Right, Michigan needs to put points on the board before Dane Christ is resurrected, and then it's going to be apocalypse now, essentially. Anyway, back to the Michigan
Great
game
movie.
real quick. It's not a good movie.
Apocalypse Now?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Wasn't that stupid, spin-off, dark comedy movie with John Travolta or something?
No, you're thinking of
Battlefield Earth.
Battlefield Earth, and that was
Yeah.
about Scientology. Apocalypse Now was a great war movie.
Battlefield Earth was about Scientology?
Yeah, it was based on some Scientology. Yeah, I don't know a lot
That was
about.
a goofy movie.
Yeah, it was that.
I knew Scientology was goofy.
Now
but
we're not going to have a Scientology crowd behind us now because of what you.
all three viewers just left because we insulted Scientology.
Sultan.
The thing I liked most about Denard Robertson last week is he didn't turn the ball over for the second straight week. No turnovers from Michigan. Now, they did put the ball on the ground a couple times, like they did the week before against UConn, but no turnovers. If he can keep doing that, forget about the 450 yards of offense. This is a team that self-destructed last year with turnovers, and if they can keep the ball in their possession and run that possession-style offense, I think that maybe it's time to revise your Big Ten predictions for this year. Penn State, from what I've seen, doesn't look to be the killers that everyone thought they were. Iowa's going to be good. Ricky Stanzi's having a good season. Here's a real question for you, Mike. Do you think last weekend at any point Terrell Pryor was sitting on the Ohio State sidelines and thought to himself, wow, why didn't I just go to Michigan? Seriously. I mean, look at Pat White, who, if I'm not mistaken, is the leading rushing quarterback of all time. At West Virginia when Rich Rod was coaching there. Terrell Pryor was recruited by Michigan. He had an opportunity to come here and run this, well, I don't know what offense you want to call it.
Pryor was
Crazy cat offense.
Pryor seems like he's been at Ohio State for the last 10 years.
I think he's only a sophomore or maybe a junior.
There's players like that where I swear they've been in the, Greg McNamara when he was with the Syracuse Orange basketball team. I swear he played for 10 years. I don't know how he did it, but.
Do you think Terrell Pryor really do you think he is having second thoughts?
No.
Because he could be getting all this Heisman talk right now.
No, he plays for Ohio State, and they're going to compete. Michigan's not, so I think that's what really is important. Ohio State has been better the last few years.
You don't think he cares about a Heisman, though?
Not as much as he cares about winning a national championship.
Yeah, all right. If you say so. All three Notre Dame quarterbacks threw picks last week. That was a big thing.
Including, who was?
Nate Montana.
Nate Montana.
We got to look at Joe Montana's seed as he competed last week in the Notre Dame game. But, yeah, they all three threw picks. Nobody looked impressive except for Dane Christ. Do you think if Dane Christ stays healthy and in that game that Michigan comes out on top?
I think it's a different game. But, yeah, I think they still come out on top.
Yeah, Michigan's offense looked, I don't know, I guess you'd say anemic at best in the second half until Dane Christ finally led.
Yeah, Dane
Irish
Christ
to it.
had nothing to do with Denard Robinson with 450 yards of total offense. I mean, it wouldn't have mattered. That was.
So what do you think Denard Robinson's going to do this week? I mean, he carried the ball 28 times last week. They're playing, I don't even know who they're playing. It's not even worth looking up, really.
Yeah.
They're playing some bum team.
Well, I imagine he won't have to, if they're playing a bum team, which they are, they won't have to rely on him as much. So I doubt that he's going to have to put up the same numbers. So I don't think he'll do as much. He'll still do really well and carve up whatever defense it is.
Do you think they're going to restrict his playing time, or do you think they're going to say, okay, Denard, you gave us a 21-point lead in the first half, put in Tate?
I think it depends on if he gets hurt early on again. I would start to think about it if I was Rich Rod. The first 2 games, he's been hit pretty hard. And the way he plays, I would be a little bit more cautious with him to make it through a whole season. He plays pretty dangerous. He isn't one of those, he doesn't slide like a normal quarterback should when he's running the ball. He just takes the hit.
We were talking earlier in the week about NFL prospects for Denard Robertson. He seems to be one of those prototypical quarterbacks where you say he's great in college, but he doesn't have an NFL future because he doesn't have an NFL body. Mm-hmm. I made the argument that perhaps he could be an NFL running back. Now, he doesn't have the size to be a quarterback. He's listed as 6 foot, 5'11" on some sites. I've heard he's as small as like 5'10", 5'9". But he's quick. He bursts through the hole. He's got strong legs. I mean, do you think that they could put 20 pounds on the guy and make him into an NFL running back?
Not running back. I don't think there's any way. He's not explosive or quick enough for a running back. I think he could be a wide receiver. Being that tall, that would probably be, excuse me, wide receiver would be much more realistic. Like an Antoine Randall with Pittsburgh. He was a quarterback. And I think that would be more along the lines. I think they talked about Tim Tebow being a wide receiver at some point. And who was the guy that was Matt Jones? Do you remember him for the Jaguars? He was a...
Yeah, the cokehead Matt Jones?
I think he ended up probably doing lots of drugs, but he was a quarterback in college, one of the quick ones, and he ended up playing wide receiver.
No, you're thinking of somebody else, I think. Jones was a big fella. He was like 6'8". He wasn't quick.
The one that played for the Jags, the wide receiver, he was
the one that's out of the league because of coke problems.
It might be him. I know he was...
I only know my athletes by their vices.
Yeah. I know for a fact that he was a quarterback. I'll look it up real quick.
Undersized for any sort of normal wide receiver position, maybe a slot receiver, like you said. But I just looked up UMass's football schedule. They're playing Massachusetts, by the way, Michigan this weekend. They're undefeated. They beat William and Mary 27-23. I don't know who those 2 individuals are, but they still managed to put up 23 points on UMass. And they beat Holy Cross in a rout 31-7 last week.
By the way, Matt Jones was a star athlete for the University of Arkansas, where he played quarterback and basketball.
Wow. Well, basketball, because he's a big guy, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's like 6'6", 6'8".
6'6".
Yeah, I remember him being a big guy.
Yeah.
Does he out of the league for coke habits? Because that's the only thing I remember about him.
I didn't look, but I know that he did some drugs.
I'm going to look.
Yeah.
Let's see. Arrests. He's got a whole section of arrests on his Wikipedia page.
That's how you know.
Yeah, that's good. He was suspended for 3 weeks, back in the lineup for week.
You're on Wikipedia, aren't you, Paul?
Yeah, because some asshole put me on there.
You're on the Bad Axe Michigan page, right?
Yeah, I was born in Bad Axe.
You're a local media personality.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you'd like to get in on this show that just seems like it's trudging along at this point, 208-1854. You can talk on FlintTalkRadio.com.
I can spice it up if you want. I can
spice me.
Okay. Well, we could talk about the women's sports, or we can talk about Inez, whatever her name was, the one that ruined the Jets.
Let's save the women's sports for a little later in the show so that we don't get angry people calling us the whole time and saying how terrible we are and not respecting feminists.
Yeah. We could talk about Inez Sands. This was a huge story. This is on Yahoo. This has got people that aren't sports fans talking. I don't know if you've heard of it by now, but there was a reporter at the Jets camp. She was sexually harassed. Her name is Inez Sands. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's been all over Deadspin and all the gossip blogs and stuff like that. She was a Miss Universe candidate. She dresses very inappropriately for being a reporter. She tried to measure Mark Sanchez's biceps after a game. What else did she do? She did some other crazy stuff.
I don't know anything about this woman. I've been sort of steering clear of this story because it seems like a big mess about nothing. But
it is a big mess about nothing. But apparently she was not offended or anything. She just wanted to report it to the league or something like that. And then the Jets owner called her and apologized. But there's this big controversy of whether, women's reporters in sports, after the whole Aaron Andrews thing and all this other stuff that's gone on with other, there's some stuff in the 90s and 80s with female reporters. Well, if you don't know anything about it, then it's going to be hard to discuss. But, how do you feel about what I'm not saying she deserved what happened to her, but
Well, what exactly happened? What are the allegations? Just she was harassed?
They were hooting and hollering at her, and she was
like
harassed.
construction site stuff?
Yeah, like construction workers walked by, except...
Well, I don't know. It's a men's locker room. I mean, I don't want to take the anti-feminist side here, but I mean, I think that if a male reporter went into a
Granted,
WNBA
we both don't
locker
think
room,
that that's appropriate for the...
No, especially if there was any
never-
physical contact or anything.
No, there
like
wasn't,
that.
but it's never appropriate for the guys to do that, and obviously they...
Well, no, but I mean, it's still a men's locker room. You know, like maybe you should limit locker room access to nobody. You know, maybe you should just keep them all out if it's going to be a big mess.
I can't imagine a guy going into the a woman's locker room after the game, and that would be very...
That wouldn't be acceptable.
But
I mean, think of how much athlete dong she was probably exposed to by just walking through there.
I guess the bigger issue here, and the whole discussion is, there's this idea, and this is like where the feminist thing comes in, where she was, this idea where she was asking for it by the way she was dressing, and some of the things she had done before by measuring biceps and being kind of flirty with the players. How do you feel about that whole discussion, whether she deserved it, and how do you feel about the way she dressed and all that whole issue there? Like, how do you want to touch that? That's
well, I mean, I don't
situation.
because it seems like it's just it's a double-edged sword here, but I'll do it anyway because like we say on the show, we've got 2 hours to fill. Okay, so for those of you not in the know, this Inez Sands or whatever, the big complaint about her is that maybe she's asking for it because of the way she dresses. If you Google her name or whatever, John, if you want to pull up a picture, I'm sure you've already got a couple saved to your computer. She wears these skin-tight outfits with leaving nothing to the imagination. It's something that women will say to other women, come on, you're supposed to be a professional. I stay away from that because I don't.
No, you should not dress like that in the workplace.
I think that we could say that without any shadow of doubt.
Not even in the workplace if you were like not on camera, like if you were
unless you worked for a pornographic filmmaking company.
In that case,
dress how you want there.
In that case, but this wouldn't be an appropriate attire for a business, a place of business, especially on air.
It seems like common sense to me, where athletes are known to sort of be.
Pigs.
Degrading. Yeah, pigs, I guess, is a good word.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that that's expected of athletes and that behavior is acceptable.
And not every athlete was hooting and hollering on her. There was a select few that were being inappropriate.
But at the same time, use your head. So all this attention has gotten to her, and I think that that's really the crux of this issue is that she just wants the attention. She's got classic American syndrome where you want that 15 minutes of fame. And to be honest, she's getting it. I mean, it's blowing up all over the place, this story. I've tried to give the hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil thing, and just staying away from it. But I can't. It's everywhere. It's a pervasive story.
It is. It's beyond just sports. We had a discussion last night with a few people, and they were in the know about it because it's especially after the Erin Andrews thing. You have a lot more discussion about.
See, I don't like the Erin Andrews comparison because Erin Andrews was stalked.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying they're not comparing her to Erin Andrews because Erin Andrews dresses. Appropriately for what she does. And she does a good job. I guess it's more of a discussion of the role of female reporters, whether they're allowed to go in locker rooms and things like that. That's all the Erin Andrews. But people are more sensitive to women's reporter issues now that the Erin Andrews thing is. Obviously, I don't think anybody would say this woman's even holds a candle to what Erin Andrews does, which is legitimate reporting. She's anchored some of the college football talk.
Yeah.
College football live and stuff like that.
This woman seems to be more of a joke, kind of like a laughing stock.
That's what it is.
I think she's just trying to get the attention for herself. I don't think that she was even bothered by whatever happened in the Jets locker room.
She said she wasn't really bothered.
But she just wants the attention anyway.
Yeah.
The whole Erin Andrews thing kind of got brought back into the spotlight with this. I read an article yesterday that alluded to the fact in a kind of a coy way that Erin Andrews may have encouraged her stalker at some point. I don't... Now, this is not me speaking here, but according to this article, and I believe I found it on Deadspin if you want to go check my sources, there she is. Yeah, see, and I think that she wears less than that when she's reporting, to be honest. That is Inez Sanz, what does she report for?
Some Mexican TV program.
Yeah, I forget the name. Azteca, TV Azteca or something like that.
I think that's why she wanted Mark Sanchez.
I see what you did there.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's sort of what she looks like on a day-to-day basis. Imagine that walking into a Jets locker room after a game,
But that's even conservatively dressed for her from some of the things you read about and stuff like that. Like she's worn some really inappropriate outfits.
Side note, do you realize that we've had 2 pictures put up on the show before, and one of them is in Sans and the other was Brad Childress last week?
I'd rather see Brad Childress.
2 ends of the spectrum.
I'm sure he gets hooted and hollered at by Brett Favre all the time on the sidelines.
Sick. I'm waking up slowly here. If you'd like to wake up with me, wait. Seems like I'm giving my number away like for some sort of prostitution.
You started talking about Inez Sands, and then...
Well, you just get me fired up about stupid stuff. You know, I can't believe this is even a story.
It shouldn't be.
810-208-1854. This is Unsportsmanlike Conduct.
Here's what I thought should have happened if the Jets were smart. I would have said, get out of here. You're not dressed appropriately.
Right.
You can't be here. If this were any other place of work, that's what you would do. Your boss would send you home if you dress like that. You went into a place of business and you dress like that, send her home. That's what I would have done. But
who says that, though? I mean, who walks up to a reporter and says, you're not dressed right, you need to leave? I mean, no one's going to do that.
Well,
granted, that would have been a great idea, but...
Well, somebody should at least said something to her, like, you need to not dress like that. Next time you come here, please dress appropriately. Somebody had to have that discussion with her. You can't just let people do whatever they want. They give out media credentials, and they're allowed to give media credentials to who they want. And if you want to dress like that, and obviously she didn't deserve... I'm going to reiterate that, what happened to her, but at some point you have to be a professional. And if you want to be treated like a professional, you have to dress like a professional. That's just how it goes.
On the other side of the coin, would they have let a shirtless dude come in there and interview players in the locker rooms?
No. Absolutely not. They'd been like, you're a weirdo. Get out of here.
Like someone with the logo network and a guy with like a...
Yeah, what if some shirtless guy
gay
walked
nipple
into...
tassels and...
What if some shirtless guy walked into...
He's got like glittery paste all over his chest.
Walked
and, like,
into
these little shorts where you could see his balls.
Yeah, what if he walked into a WNBA locker room?
What if he walked into a men's locker room? I'm just saying they would kick him out. They'd be like, "What are you doing in here? Get out!"
I know.
But when it's a woman, hey, she's attractive. Hold on. Let's hit the attractiveness real quick. We're all heterosexual dudes, right? She looks hit.
Yeah. Agreed.
Like, she looks like she was maybe attractive like 10 or 15 years ago, but now it's like I can kind of see through that. Am I getting old to say that I can say that, oh, yeah, she's got a nice body, but... Ew.
No, you're perfect.
She looks hit.
Yeah, she does. Maybe that's why she's trying to get her last minutes of fame before she's totally
that's a good point.
Thrown out. I don't know.
We can talk about this a little later, too, if you want. And if you guys want to talk about it, everyone that's listening out there, you can call the number 810-208-1854.
I think a lot of women would agree with our view, too. Even some of the most extreme feminists would be like, yeah, that's degrading towards women, what she did. They would be like, she shouldn't be dressing like that because that's setting us back like 50 years.
I'd like to hear another person's opinion because I kind of feel like I'm in a bubble about this,
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I think that a lot of people don't want to talk about it. They're kind of wary of the topic because it seems like somebody with a big mouth like one of us could slip up pretty quickly and say something offensive and not intend it.
Yeah.
Let's get back to some football talk. Michigan, like I said, beat Notre Dame last weekend. They've got, is it UMass on the schedule? I can't believe UMass even has a football team. They got UMass this week. Michigan State beats Western. They got Notre Dame tomorrow. You think MSU is going to win this game. Mm-hmm. What if they don't?
Then they don't.
What does that mean to them in the big picture? Because that I think it's a big game because you already have a precedent set. You have Michigan beating Notre Dame. Now, if MSU goes and loses to Notre Dame, does that mean that Michigan's a better team than MSU? Does that mean they win in Week 6 when they play? Does that mean that Michigan possibly finishes ahead of Michigan State in the Big Ten schedule?
I don't know. I don't think it means a whole lot. I think what really matters to Michigan State is when they play each other. I don't think they're going to be able to they're not going to go like, oh, we lost to Notre Dame. We're not as good as Michigan. The talk of the town right now is Michigan with Denard Robertson. Michigan State isn't going to be able to creep out of the shadow even if they win this game. There's probably not going to be discussion if they were to even blow out Notre Dame that Michigan State's so much better than Michigan because Michigan, all the national media is talking about Denard Robertson. So
right.
I don't think it really matters. They need this victory. They need to beat Notre Dame, but in the big picture, I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Let's talk about the biggest story in the football world last weekend.
Reggie?
No, not Reggie.
Oh.
We could talk about Reggie Bush, but I'd like to talk about the Detroit Lions.
Our
hometown Detroit Lions that are now 0-1. as a result, as some were saying, as a screw job by the referees. The final score in this game was it was a 19-14?
1914.
1914. The Bears beat the Lions at Soldier Field. The Detroit Lions' 21st consecutive road loss. The Lions were up 14-3 late in the first half when Matt Forte caught an 89-yard screen pass from Jay Cutler to make it 14-10. And then Julius Peppers killed Matt Stafford on the next possession. He left the game and did not return. Chicago ended up with a field goal as a result of that sack. 14-3 was the score at half. Chicago finally scores late in the fourth as a result of Matt Forte, another touchdown pass from Jay Cutler, 19-14. They screw up the two-point conversion. Sean Hill leads the Lions down the field. This is a team I think had one first down in the entire second half until this drive. Sean Hill takes the Lions down the field on 2nd and 10, throws a bomb to Calvin Johnson, who brings it down in the end zone, appears to have scored the game-winning touchdown, and yet it is called on the field initially a touchdown, and then they overturn it, send it to video evidence, and the call stands. No TD. Calvin Johnson did not hold on to the ball through the process of the catch. The Lions end up losing 19-14 as a result. So if you haven't seen the catch yet,
everybody has.
I think everyone's seen the catch. Was it a catch?
It was a catch, according to some obscure rule. I think if you showed it to any, even non-football, like if you didn't know anything about football and you said, is this a catch? Everybody would say, yeah, that's definitely a catch. But I guess the part that makes me most upset about this whole thing is that the league office isn't discussing this at all, or discussing, well, maybe this is a ridiculous rule that doesn't make any sense because it only applies to this part of the field, and it takes away touchdowns that should be touchdowns. They're not even addressing it. They're just saying the rules, and we're not going to change it. I think that's a little bit of arrogance, and that's what's frustrating here because the officials got the call right, I think, according to the rules, which I think it's a terrible rule. But I don't think anybody can argue that if you look at the rule that, yeah, they have a legitimate point that he didn't, the whole process, it's a weird rule.
The way that this went down is Calvin Johnson went up, pulled down the ball with two hands, got 1 foot down, 2 foot down, and as he's coming down, he took the ball with one hand and held it out as such. He gets 3 feet down, he gets his ass down, and then what he does is when Calvin Johnson scores touchdowns, I've seen him do this before. He kind of rolls over and sets the ball down with one hand, like so, and then gets up and starts running around.
This is where the debate is between us. I think he wasn't showboating at all. I think he was just
using the ball to push himself up.
I think he was bracing himself. There was some complaint before that he didn't brace himself. I don't know what it was, but that he needed to do that. One of his coaches, I don't know if it was Mariucci. I forgot who it was.
Either way, he takes the ball like this, puts it down one-handed, and then pushes up and gets up. Well, they said that the ball slips from his hand as he goes to set it down, and so that he didn't have the ball secured as he came to the ground, and therefore it's not a catch.
The thing that's crazy to me, though, is that he, every other part of his body landed, and he was down, and then he let go of the football. He had completed the catch, as far as I know. He physically, he was on his ass. Every part of him was down. And any other part of the field, if you were to land like that, because he had possession of the football the whole entire time. And if that ever happened at any other part of the field,
I disagree.
If that happened on any other part of the field, that would be ruled down by contact. And there's no way they would take that away.
If he caught a ball at midfield with two hands like this and then fell down on his ass and the ball popped out, even though he sat down with the ball in his hands, is that still a catch?
Yeah, it is.
Why?
Because as long as when you're down, if he had full possession of the ball, he made a football play. He caught it. There was no doubt.
He didn't have it in his body like this. He had it out
He palmed
like
it,
this.
which was even more convincing. He had caught the ball and it wasn't bobbling around. If you're on any other part of the field and you land and then the ball comes loose, that's why they always check and see if your knee's down. Because once your knee's down and you have possession of the ball, play's over with. Because what happens is that defensive players will come and try to knock the ball loose.
Yeah, but it's not the same in the end zone though. It's sort of different rules.
That's what my point is, and that's why it's such an insane rule. Because it shouldn't be different for one part of the field. If that were to happen they wouldn't have ruled that a fumble on any other part of the field. That would have been ruled. That would have been ruled a catch on any other part of the field.
Well, it wasn't a fumble because then it would have been a touchback.
Yeah, no, but that's what I'm saying is that on any other part of the field, that wouldn't be ruled as a fumble. That would be ruled as a catch. And just because it happened in the end zone, it's an insane rule that doesn't make you have to try, like, the way they even explain it, the process of it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It doesn't make any intuitive sense. When you hit when there's a home run, it's a home run. When you make a basket, it's a basket. When you make a catch, it should be a catch. It shouldn't be like, well, there's these certain things that it doesn't make any sense. If you looked at it, anybody looked at it, I don't think anybody can debate that he caught the ball. If you were a non-football fan, you would say that man caught the ball. But because of some obscure rule that really, I don't know in what circumstance that rule was needed, but
I completely disagree. The first time I saw the replay, after I got to running around and celebrating the fact that the Lions won the game, I saw the replay and I said, "It's not a catch. That's going to be overruled.
You are probably
It's not a
the
catch."
only one. I've read countless articles and I've listened to every time I've listened to sports talk, every time that I've read an article, and it was on Yahoo, on the front of Yahoo, catch.
Bart Scott on our Facebook page says, "Got to maintain possession through to the ground. The ball was still on the way down. The ground caused him to drop it. Next time he'll worry more about securing the TD and less about celebrating. Take that, Lions fans. You'll never be respectable."
He had full possession of the. I've seen the replay countless times. They led the news with it. He caught the ball. I don't think there's any debate that he caught the ball. That's crazy to me even that there's debate about it. I think the argument for the rest of the nation is whether or not that should be a rule. That's been all the discussion. Most of this, nobody has discussed when they had on like Sports Center or something like that, whether or not that was a catch. What's been discussed is whether the officials got the call right, which they did according to the rule. And then from there, the topic has been, why is the NFL so arrogant about this rule and why hasn't it been changed? Another interesting thing that through a limited research and through Deadspin.com, this has happened in the reverse to the Lions, where they won a game because of this rule. It happened in 2006. I don't have the exact
4 years
game.
ago against the Bears.
The Bears.
It was the same thing. Bernard Berrien made a catch in the end zone that was not ruled a catch because of the same rule, essentially. And even after the game, the Lions coach, Steve Mariucci at the time, said that he doesn't understand why that wasn't a catch.
Yeah.
But he'll take the win.
Yeah.
That was the year that the Lions went 7-9. They started like 6-1 or 6-2 or something like that, and ended up petering out. I believe that was their 7th and last win of the season against the Bears. You know what? I see why it's a rule, and I again, maybe I'm in the minority here, but the reason that you have to secure, because just imagine a situation where a receiver doesn't. Okay, this is not the Calvin situation, but I'll explain why the Calvin situation is a necessary component of this rule in a second. But imagine a receiver pulls the ball down in the end zone and gets 2 feet in or whatever, and then just lets go of the ball as he's getting pushed out of bounds. Like, would you say that that's a catch because he got 2 feet in?
He was down. He was down though. He landed on his ass. Even he was down.
I'm saying this is a separate.
I know,
situation.
but you can't even compare. That's why I'm saying.
But it's the same thing though, right? Because he got 2 feet in, he's secured, he's got the ball in his hands, and then he lets go of it.
I mean, it would depend on that would depend on a lot of things. How long did he have possession for it? Because Kelvin held on to it. He had the ball in his possession for a long time, and he didn't let. If the player, like, for example, had both feet in and then he landed in the end zone and then he dropped it, that would be a touchdown. But
why?
Because he
the point of the matter is, if Calvin Johnson just swung the ball into his body, the Lions win the game. If Calvin Johnson wasn't so concerned about bracing himself or celebrating or making himself look at what a badass I am as I hold the ball out like this.
I don't think that was it. I guess that's where our point of contention is. I don't think he was trying to showboat or anything like that. I just when you're in the middle of the play, he wasn't thinking like all these things. He wasn't like, yeah, I need a showboat. It was like just happening. It was like a split decision where he wasn't even thinking probably. And you can think when you just go up and catch a ball like that.
Here's what I don't get about your brace yourself argument. He went up with 2 hands. He made the catch with 2 hands. And then he took one hand away to brace himself on the ground. So why would he need to bring the other hand down to brace himself?
I don't know if we can pull up video, but it doesn't look like. I mean,
can you get to that? I know it's kind of like late notice, but
it would be awfully hard if I try to pull on this computer. Yeah.
Okay.
Knock you off. Yeah.
All right. Well, but like I'm saying, I don't understand why you have to bring that other hand in to brace yourself. You've already got one hand on the ground. I mean, do you always need to land with 2 hands on the ground? Because that's not a very good thing for a receiver.
He landed kind of funny, and apparently Martz had complained before that he didn't know how to brace himself and he was going to get hurt that way. And maybe that's what he was trying to think about. I don't know. It just seems like a rule that doesn't make any intuitive sense. And how long do you want him to carry it for? Like, if I was Kelvin Johnson, I would run with the ball to the hotel room next time to make sure that that's what I would do.
Yeah.
I would just hold
and
on
he
to the ball.
should. I mean, if he thinks he's being discriminated against, I don't think that I don't think it was a catch. I looked at that and said, you know what? If he would have held the ball into his body, the game's over. The Lions win. But he didn't do that. He held it out, and just the way that the ball went to the ground. Like, if he put it on the ground firmly and it looked like he spiked it, maybe that's a catch. But what he did is he kind of went like this to like set it on the ground, and it squirted loose and kind of like spun a little bit, and it just looked goofy, like maybe he lost it.
But that's still a catch on any other part of the field.
Even without contact.
He landed
without contact. You say that's a catch. Absolutely not. There's no way.
Yeah.
That's a fumble, if anything.
No, it never is. It would never, ever be ruled a fumble because he landed he was down. He landed on his ass, and at that point, he was down. So at that point, if the ball squirts loose, it doesn't matter.
But you're not down in the NFL without contact. If he caught the ball at midfield, did the same thing, 2 steps, let's say there's no defenders around him, takes 2 steps, falls on his ass, and then sets the ball like that, that's not a catch. That's a fumble.
But you're... Once you're in the end zone, the play stops. Once you score,
so that is different for the end zone. Then you're saying that the rule should be different.
Yeah, the rule should be different. Yeah, the rule should be different. That's a catch. That's the difference. Once you're down if you land like that in any other part of the field, and you're knocked.
That's a fumble at midfield. Would not. But it's a catch in the end zone, is what you're saying.
Yeah, because once you're in the end zone, it doesn't matter. The play's over with. Once you cross the plane, if somebody hits you after that, the play's over with.
Yeah, that's for a running back though, not a reception. The cross the plane issue doesn't even make sense. That's not that has nothing to do with the reception. That's just a running.
But once you're in the touchdown, if you catch the ball, you're not allowed to get. You're down. Once you're down in the end zone, I've never seen that before. I've seen it in 2006 when that happened. And all the football people and all the professional football people, all the coaches, I would go on a limb and say that nobody commented that was on the Bears team, that wasn't a catch. I'm going to say if you looked at the article, at not one point did the Bears say, yeah, that was a catch. They probably said similar to who was it, the coach in 2006?
Mariucci.
What Mariucci said, that, yeah, I don't understand why that wasn't a catch. I think intuitive sense says that's a catch, but I don't. He was down. He was down like 2 or 3 times. But the issue is that rule. That's the weird thing, is that rule. I mean, how much longer does he have to hold on to the ball after he lands?
He just needs to put it into his body. He just needs to secure it.
But if he landed like that and he held down and he sat down there for 2 or 3 seconds and then he let go of the ball, is that okay?
Yeah, probably.
See, that doesn't...
Yeah, I mean, after you show you have possession. The problem is that
he had possession.
They ruled in the instant replay under the hood that it wasn't 2 separate motions. It wasn't catch, then roll over and spike the ball. What they ruled was it was one fluid motion where he just turned and set the ball down, basically, and so it's not a catch. If he had stopped, held the ball into his body or whatever, or even held it out, sitting down, they rule it a catch. Then he goes and sets the ball down. That's totally different. But the fact of the matter is he was bringing his hand down, and the ball hits the ground. I mean, it wasn't a catch. And I understand why they have that rule, because like I just brought up the other situation. If a receiver catches the ball with 2 hands in the end zone and then lets go of the ball, that has to be not a catch. I mean, are we in agreement there?
Well, you repeat that again?
Okay, receiver pulls on a ball in the back of the end zone like so, gets 2 feet in bounds, and as he's falling to the ground, lets go of the ball. But he got 2 feet in. Or where you can make the argument that his ass hit too, if you want to bring the ass into the play.
Yeah.
Let's say he's sliding back into the end zone, his ass is on the ground, he makes the catch, and then lets go of the ball out of bounds.
Well, but that's, once again, you have to. That depends on how long did he have the ball. Like, was he holding on it to a good 3 or 4 seconds, or was it just like?
Well, Calvin wasn't holding on to the ball for 3 or 4 seconds.
He had it for quite a few. I mean, he made it look like just looking at it, looked like a...
I understand the necessity of the rule, and I hope they don't change it. It's unfortunate that the Lions have to get burned by losing a victory in the process, but I see why that's a rule, and I honestly think that it should be a rule, because there's so many... maybe this was applied to the wrong circumstance. You could make that argument, that intuitively, like you said, maybe everyone thinks it's a catch. But at the same time, I see the necessity of the rule, and I wouldn't want them to change it, because it opens up a Pandora's box or a whole bunch of other goofy shit that could happen, that you have to rule a catch, because Well, he did get his foot down, or he did get his ass down on the ground, you know.
Here's a little from Chris Chase of Yahoo. He says, "Don't blame the refs for this one. They made the correct decision as dictated by the rule book. The fault lies with the rule itself. Why do there have to be so many conditions to a catch? Toddlers know when a ball is caught and when it isn't. Aside from getting 2 feet in, what does the NFL want people to do? Should Kelvin Johnson have brought the ball with him to the sideline? Should he hold on to it for the flight home, take it to dinner? When does the process of the catch end? The process of the catch is what's the convoluted thing here. This is like the infamous tuck rule. It goes against all logic. We know when a ball is fumbled, and we know when a ball is caught. This ball was caught. The Detroit Lions should have taken the lead on the Bears and been in the position to win their road games, their first road game in nearly 3 years. And I guess the bigger picture issue is this doesn't really matter at all. Because the
Lions are going to start like 0-5 now because they've got Philadelphia at home this week. And Michael Vick is going to put up like 400. He's going to have a Denard Robertson day on the Lions this week. Then they've got to go to Minnesota and then to Lambeau Field. You're going to start 0-4, you know, and you're going to be without Matthew Stafford for probably at least 2/3 of those games.
The bigger issue in this whole game, other than the catch, was losing Matthew Stafford. That's the bigger.
Yeah, I agree.
That's the bigger issue here.
That's something we asked on our Facebook is which is the bigger loss, the game or Matthew Stafford? And they're being real hush-hush about the Matthew Stafford injury. I mean, I've tried to find countless things on it. And basically what they're saying is Jim Schwartz knows how long Matthew Stafford's going to be out, but he's not telling anybody. So that's all we've got. It was a second-degree shoulder separation as a result of that Julius Peppers sack. And Matthew Stafford is out for this week at least, and they're not giving us anything else. I mean, initial reports said between 2 and 8 weeks, which is kind of a big window. So we'll see. And I guess the bigger concern, even more so than that, is Matthew Stafford an injury-prone quarterback?
It would seem like it was the same shoulder, wasn't it? Maybe he's got the...
It was his non-throwing shoulder last season, but he injured this shoulder in college in addition to a knee injury that he had in college.
Yeah.
So this is like... the 2 injuries in college weren't
very
substantial.
Very fragile.
Yeah, God. I mean, it's the first time that he really got touched in that game was at that point. And, of course, it's Jeff Backus. He had a pretty good game, though, Backus
Yeah, besides that. But once you do something like that, he was completely blindsided. It was out of nowhere. You have to not let him get such a free shot at the quarterback because that can't happen. A lot of players would. I mean, most quarterbacks would be injured if Julius Peppers blindsided you. And
I forgot how big Julius Peppers was. He's a
fast,
big dude
and strong.
I thought that he was past the prime in his career, but
yeah. But when you're lining up against Jeff Backus, I guess
Jeff Backus is solid, man. He's an above-average tackle, and he allowed one guy to get by him, and that
But that always seems to be Jeff Backus' thing. You know, he might have a good game, but then he'll have some 2 or 3 penalties that are just absolutely unnecessary. So does that make you... Unfortunately, when you're a tackle like that, or when you're a guard, or when you're a center, you can't have situations like that and be considered a good offensive lineman. You can't have situations where you get your quarterback killed. You can't take stupid penalties. In other parts of other positions, you can have mistakes like that, but you're expected to be perfect almost all the time if you want to be.
I've got to say, the Lions' offense in general was a disaster on Sunday.
I'm reading here. Backus is one of the NFL's worst left tackles, ranking him on the worst in sacks allowed.
Career-wise or in the last couple seasons? Because I think in the last couple seasons he's definitely been above average in terms of sacks allowed.
I think the last couple seasons. I'd have to look at stats.
And what does that? I mean, what does that say about the rest of the guys he's playing with too? I mean, you could put Michael Orr, who the Lions should have drafted last season, by the way, or 2 seasons ago, out there at tackle, and the same things are probably going to happen because the rest of the line is bad.
Yeah, but you can't say that.
Put Jonathan Ogden out there at left tackle, and I still think you're going to take sacks because he can't take 2 defenders. I think Jeff Backus is definitely a plus player out there on offense, at least right now. One more thing I wanted to say about the catch, and then we can move on past that issue. You have to sort of abide by the goofy rules of the sport that you're playing. And all sports have stupid rules that don't make any sense.
Agreed. But this isn't a rule that I don't think anybody really knew about, the process of the catch. Like, this wasn't something that you and I would have thought about.
I wasn't familiar with the rule until everyone brought it to my attention. But like I said to you, when I saw the first replay of Calvin Johnson's touchdown catch, I said that's not a catch. But Yeah, I know just from. I mean, I don't need to read the actual rule to know that you need to have the ball secured when you hit the ground.
I think he had it secured. I think that's where our debate is.
There's just something to me that says showboating about holding the ball like this. You can make whatever excuse you want, but there's something to me that says when you go up with two hands and come down like this, it just says to me, you know what?
I think you're exaggerating that, though. I wish we could show a video of it because I don't think it's like that. I don't think it's like that bad. I think that a lot of it was just him falling down, and that's just how the ball came out.
But I guess the point is, all sports have stupid rules that everyone wants to change. I mean, look at the replay thing in baseball. We're going to talk about the Derek Jeter issue from.
I think that's why they didn't say. I think that's why Jim Schwartz wasn't, up in arms about this.
Well, that and he didn't want to pay a $25,000 fine for shit talking the officials.
But I don't. He knows that there's nothing you can do about it, and he knows that it's in the whole grand scheme of things. It's just something fun to talk about on sports talk radio or, on the news just to watch it. But in the whole grand scheme of things, the bigger issue is Matthew Stafford. The bigger issue is that the Lions aren't going to win very many games this year. One loss to the Bears isn't really.
I think the Lions will beat the Bears at home in their next match, especially if Matthew Stafford's back and healthy. How do you feel about Sean Hill being your starting quarterback going into this week?
He's 10-6. I think career-wise, I don't hate him.
He's played in each of the last 3 seasons, despite the fact that he's been a backup.
Yeah, I don't hate him. I don't think he's horrible. I'd much rather have Stafford, but there's really nothing. I'd rather have him than Drew Stanton, I guess. I don't think Sean Hill's going to make or break the Lions.
They came up with a stat last week at the end of last week's game that said that Sean Hill had led 4 game-winning touchdown drives over the course of his career.
He has been oddly
pretty much a
good
backup.
if you look at his stats, and you forget about that because it's Sean Hill.
He came from what, San Francisco, or was he in Seattle for some time?
San Francisco.
Okay, yeah, he was playing in the Alex Smith tandem in San Francisco. I don't hate him either. I think that you're probably going to be forced to run the ball a bit more than you would if Matthew Stafford wasn't hurt. Javid Best had like 20 yards on the ground last week. The Lions' offense was just anemic in general. 57 plays, only 168 yards, 148 of them passing. You had 20 yards rushing in the game. Javid Best scored 2 touchdowns in his career debut, which is great until you look at the rest of his stat line, where he got 14 carries for only 20 yards. 2 of the 4 players that ran the ball for Detroit had negative rushing averages.
I don't know what happened. The holes weren't opening up. Like, he was waiting for the holes to open up, and the line just didn't do as well as they did in the preseason. Maybe that's because now they have to play against legitimate players, but I don't know.
I want to talk as a whole about the game that Calvin Johnson played last week. I thought he looked bad.
He didn't do well.
He led Lions receivers in catches. Tony Scheffler had more, and Javid Best had more. But I thought he dropped a couple balls. I thought he fell down on that out route we ran for him on the left sideline, and that ball ended up intercepted and ended a drive. I think that Calvin Johnson really hurt the team as a whole, and he could have redeemed himself at the last, in the last play of the game, but he didn't. But I think that Calvin Johnson really needs to come out against Philadelphia and have a big week this week.
Yeah, well, hopefully Sean Hill can hook up with them, and I didn't think he looked great at all. I think the last play he redeemed himself, but
do you think that Calvin Johnson is substantial trade bait for midseason Detroit Lions?
I don't think
there was talks last year about moving Calvin Johnson.
I don't like constant. I mean, you have to have some kind of consistency in the locker room. You have to have some kind of player that people can look at and be like, well, we can get excited about Calvin Johnson. You can't just trade away every time you have a good player because, oh, we're waiting until next season. Oh, we're waiting until this next season. Or, oh, we're going to develop things for the future. Eventually, the Lions are going to have to go like, we need to keep our good players and we need to try to produce now. Because if you keep just trading away every time somebody gets really talented.
Like what? When did that happen?
No, I'm saying in sports in general. I'm not talking about just the Lions. But I hate that philosophy where you have a bad team and then you trade away your great player because you want to be good. And especially with the NFL draft, it's so hit or miss. I don't really like trading away for picks and stuff like that.
He's got 3 years left on his contract. What are the chances that he actually re-signs with Detroit at the end of that contract?
I guess it would depend on
I would say
much.
Close to absolute zero.
I don't know about that. It depends on how far let's say Matthew Stafford's still in the league in 3 years.
Yeah, that's
if he's not hurt. And maybe Javid Best improves. Maybe they draft a few offensive linemen. Maybe they start to improve, and then he'll want to stay because he's been here a few years.
It's a lot of maybes.
Yeah, but that's how it is with. But there's more maybes if you trade away and then you draft a player, because we've seen how the Lions draft.
Mm-hmm.
Brandon Pettigrew was not the best tight end out there. It was what's his face, the big white dude. What's his name? They were just talking about on 97.1. But anyways, they were talking about how bad Brandon Pettigrew looked.
Well, Pettigrew's dealt with a lot of injuries in his young career.
I mean,
too.
we've
It's
drafted
tough to
running
say.
backs like Kevin Jones and then Kevin Smith.
Kevin Smith had a real good rookie season and a real solid sophomore season. I think the injury bug hurt him too.
Well, I mean, you could say the same thing about Charlie Rogers. Started off hot, and then Mike Williams never really panned out. But I don't trust.
Mike Williams is back in the league.
He shouldn't be.
He scored 6 fantasy points for whoever played him last week.
Yeah.
He's in Seattle.
Yeah. He should have been an offensive lineman. But I don't trust draft picks. I think there's too many. I mean, you can get good players in the 6th round you'll never expect.
The Roy Williams thing worked out. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
You got was it a first and a second for Roy Williams?
Yeah.
Which
But-
just seems like an absurdly high amount of value for a guy that really never was a consistent producer for the Lions
Yeah,
offense.
but I like Kelvin Johnson more than I liked Roy Williams.
I say trade him. Take what you can get for him because he's not going to come back. Maybe not this season, but let's say
But you
next
do that
season.
with every good player you have because they're never going to come back.
No, I think that Calvin Johnson has I'm starting to see a bit of a wide receiver type attitude issue with Calvin Johnson. I'm starting to get that sort of feeling that maybe, I don't know, like you sort of saw that with Terrell Owens, like towards the end of his productive career. I guess there's like at the end of his prime, he was starting to complain a lot about, I'm not getting the attention I deserve. I'm not getting the ball thrown to me enough. I'm not getting put in situations where I can strive. And you're going to look at this guy who's had a starting quarterback that was drafted for him, basically, hurt the last 2 seasons. He's not getting the ball in situations where he wants it. He only scored 5 touchdowns last season. And this is a guy that we can honestly say is more talented than a 5-touchdown receiver. I mean, this is a guy is not going to be happy in a year in this city.
But you don't want to do that to Matthew Stafford either. You don't want to screw your investment like that where you trade away his best receiver. He's going to be very angry about that. I would be if I was Matthew Stafford. You trade away your best wide receiver. So then you have to bring in a new wide receiver who you're not familiar with that you draft. I don't even know if there's any wide receivers. I can't think of any in college that would even compare to somebody like Kelvin Johnson right now. I don't know any really top prospects of the wide receivers in college, so I don't think he's going to be getting Kelvin. I mean, you've talked about before. I don't necessarily think it's true that the Lions should have a high-powered offense. I think if you get rid of Kelvin Johnson, you absolutely can't talk about that at all. I think you have to have somebody like Kelvin Johnson on your team for Matthew Stafford. And I think one of the problems last week for the Lions was their insistence on running the ball when this is a passing league, and they should have opened up the field more. I thought that's what they should have done. I thought they weren't getting very many yards on the run.
They didn't run the ball very much. They passed the ball an awful lot more than they ran the ball just because they just weren't picking up first downs. They'd run the ball on first or second
How
down.
many runs did
I just closed the box score. But the fact of the matter was they just didn't have time of possession. They, for the most part in the second half, they were 3 and out every single time, punting the ball back to Chicago. Yeah, they might have had more carries than they did pass plays, but a lot of those were backed up in your own goal line after that. Well, let's talk real quick about that first and goal stop that the Lions had against the Bears, where the Bears had the ball inside like the Lions' 6-inch line after the Matthew Stafford injury. This is in the second half. They had the ball on like the 6-inch line and tried 4 plays from the goal line and didn't score on the Lions' defense. How do you think the front 4 played in their first game together, the highly touted defensive front 4?
Well, I mean, you could just look at Kyle Vandenbosch. He had 10 tackles. That's absolutely insane.
For a defensive end, that's absurd.
Yeah, I think the most I heard last season was 49 for a defensive end, and here he has 10. So I think you have to be impressed. But
I thought in the first half they really weren't a factor. Ndamukong Suh recorded his first tackle and his first sack. Was it Turk McBride had another one? I thought the front 4 played pretty well. I thought that they kept the Lions in the game at times.
Yeah, Turk McBride had a sack. And then Sammy Hill had a sack.
Sammy Hill, an undersized defensive tackle playing alongside.
Tony
Ndamukong
Scheffler
Suh.
was the tight end I was looking for that outproduced Brandon Pettigrew.
Oh, I thought you meant a younger guy.
Oh, no, tight end.
Yeah, Scheffler
I
had 6 catches
Yeah.
the other day.
And that shouldn't happen. If you're Brandon Pettigrew and you're drafted that high and you're that physical of a specimen.
Pettigrew wasn't on the field. Pettigrew was pretty much kept out of the game. The Lions talked in the preseason about running a lot of 2 tight end sets. Brandon Pettigrew did not get a lot of PT.
That's part of the issue is that you shouldn't be letting Tony Scheffler. If you're Brandon Pettigrew, with how much you have going for you and how highly you were drafted, you should be more competitive.
Pettigrew is maybe a more physical specimen, but Scheffler was a very productive tight end in Denver. I mean, he was Jay Cutler's favorite target when he was there.
If I'm not mistaken, he's kind of getting up there. And
the only reason that Denver let him go is because they've got a whole bunch of tight ends on that squad, and they could afford to cut one loose. And I like Tony Scheffler. I think Tony Scheffler could really end up panning out for Detroit this season. But Brandon Pettigrew. I think
he was a first-round draft pick, though. Brandon Pettigrew, when he was supposed to be highly touted, you could have spent that somewhere else if you weren't.
You should have spent it somewhere else.
Yeah.
I'm not defending the Brandon Pettigrew draft pick. I would like to see him have a full, healthy season, and then we can make a judgment. But right now, I mean, you've got Scheffler, like you said, so I don't think there's any reason to get too worked up about it. If you'd like to get in on the sports talk, we're talking Lions. We're talking all sorts of football stuff today. The number is 810-208-1854. Hopefully you're watching on Flint Talk Radio. You could be watching on YouTube. We're YouTube celebrities now.
Yeah.
I guess you could say. So Lions, Eagles this Sunday. What's this game going to look like?
It's going to be Michael Vick running all over the Lions defense. I think you picked up Michael Vick, didn't you, for one of your fantasy teams?
Yeah, you damn right I did.
Yeah. I think it's going to be – I don't know if it's even going to be – it'll probably be close.
I had a quarterback conundrum in
one
of my fantasy leagues.
I take it back. It won't be close. Sean Hill's going to bomb. Michael Vick's going to run all over the place.
I think it will be. I think it'll be a
puppies.
closer game than you'd think. The Eagles are 0-1. They lost to the Packers last week.
Yeah.
Kevin Cobb out with a concussion, which is why Michael Vick is starting.
Pretty good, though, for not playing in a while. He looked pretty
starting
good.
His first game since 2006. I think that Michael Vick is going to have a big game, but I don't know. I like the Lions front four against the Eagles offensive line. I like them against Vick trying to run around. I think the Lions can do a lot. I think Vick is going to be a little conservative in terms of trying to rush for 150 yards in his first game as a starting quarterback, because I think he kind of sees himself as like a serving, like if let's say the president was assassinated, he's the president pro tem, if you will, right now in Philadelphia, and he needs to earn that starting spot. So if he bombs against the Lions because he's trying to run around like 2004 Michael Vick, I think that's really going to hurt his chances of staying the starter there. So I think you're going to see a more conservative Michael Vick. Last game against the Packers, I think he just sort of went nuts in the second half because they were down the whole game. They really needed him to scramble around and make plays. But
he scrambled more in the first half of that game. Like that's when
he
he
didn't
broke
play
off.
much in the first half of that game because Kevin Cobb got taken out.
That's when he broke off his big run of the day, the one where he jumped and he got killed, which reminded me of Michael Vick from 2004. Because one of the complaints about Michael Vick is that he doesn't know, and this is a problem with like Tim Tebow when he jumped in the end zone in the preseason. This happened in the first half. He jumped and then the defender like crushed him in the back, and that's what I'd be more concerned about if I was Michael Vick, being an idiot and trying to run and then get hit like that. But I think he's going to run all over. I don't think he's going to have any problem running against the Lions. I don't think he's even going to think about it. He's just going to play.
That's good. Let him run, because the Lions secondary is really where the problem is. As long as he doesn't start throwing the ball, let him run around for all I care.
Well, once he gets to the secondary, it's going to be all over.
Yeah, that's true too. And the Lions facing all sorts of injuries. Delmas didn't practice again this week. C.C. Brown, who played a really good game, I thought, at the other safety position last week, he didn't play or didn't practice much this week. I don't know. Cliff Averill is expected to be back in the lineup against the Eagles this weekend. I just read that a second ago. What do you need to see out of Sean Hill to make you feel like the season's not completely over next week? Because I don't know how long we're going to be stuck with him.
I heard maybe 2 or 3 weeks is all that Stafford's going to be out.
I just checked the most recent thing, and they said that they're not announcing what the injury was.
There was some inside. I heard it. I read it somewhere that they had some like text message that I don't know, that it might only be 2 or 3 weeks.
I hope so. I hope you're right.
I don't know. Sean Hill's been really a good starting quarterback for his NFL career. I mean, 10-6 is something.
I just hope he doesn't turn the ball over a lot. If I just get like a one turnover performance from Sean Hill, no matter what he does through the air, I'll be happy with that. We got to take a quick break. We're going to be back for another hour of Unsportsmanlike Conduct. We've got some more stuff to talk about, including the final word on the Reggie Bush Heisman issue that we've talked about the last 2 weeks. In addition to that, we're going to be talking some women's sports. Stay with us if you'd like. We'll be back in just a second. You're listening to Unsportsmanlike Conduct.